Not only is Coca Cola one of the most successful names in American business history, but it is also one of the largest beverage companies in the world. There is almost no corner of the world where humans reside that one won't find a bottle of Coke. So how did a beverage founded by a sick man become as popular as it is today? This is the story of how Atlanta pharmacist Dr. John S. Pemberton came up with the idea of the Coca-Cola beverage on his deathbed. To truly understand the impressive rise of this beverage brand, we must go back to the very beginning, the man behind the idea, John STITH Pemberton. John STITH Pemberton. Pemberton was born on July 8, 1831, in Knoxville, Georgia, and spent most of his childhood in Rome, Georgia. Pemberton enrolled in the Reformed Medical College of Georgia in Macon, Georgia, and graduated from medical school in 1850 at the age of 19. His strongest skill was chemistry. Pemberton first dabbled in surgery and medicine before opening a pharmacy in Columbus. However, Pemberton thought that medicine was not the path he wanted to tread, so he ditched his lab coat for something else, a battle uniform. Pemberton participated in the American Civil War as a member of the 3rd Cavalry Battalion of the Georgia State Guard, which at the time was a part of the Confederate Army. He rose to the position of lieutenant colonel. John Pemberton could have gone farther and higher in the military, but fate had something else in store for him, although it almost cost him his life. He was struck in the chest with a saber 3 years into the fight after being trapped in a direct line of fire. His physicians offered him morphine to relieve the pain during his final few hours since they didn't think he would survive, but he miraculously pulled through. From that point forward, getting John back on his feet was simply a matter of time. John fought for a better life once the Civil War's haze dissipated. He relocated his family to Atlanta and rose through the ranks of a pharmaceutical company. The media referred to it as one of the most spectacular labs in the United States, and John rose to prominence as Atlanta's most well-known physician. However, what was unknown to Pemberton's friends, work colleagues, and family members was that he had become addicted to the morphine used to heal his pain. The birth of Coca Cola. Pemberton started experimenting with medications that would serve as morphine-free substitutes for morphine in 1866 in an effort to overcome his addiction. He had heard fantastic things about Vin Mariani at the time. Containing crushed coca leaves and red wine, the herbal drink was claimed to cure any sickness since it. He then decided to come up with his own liquor. His first recipe was Dr. Tuthill's compound syrup of globe flower, in which the active ingredient was derived from the bun bush, a toxic plant. He then began experimenting with coca and coca wines, finally developing a mixture that included cola nut, coca leaves, red wine, and Damiana extracts, which he named Pemberton's French wine coca. Coca leaves have long been used as a stimulant, suppressing appetite, thirst, exhaustion, and discomfort, whereas Damiana leaves contain 0.35% cocaine. It was widely available in the United States, and some doctors and pharmacists stated that it might be used to treat morphine addiction. Cola nuts, on the other hand, were strong in caffeine and were thought to assist digestion. John felt that his French wine, coca, could not only heal addictions, but also depression, stress, and many diseases such as migraines. With public anxiety about war veterans' drug addiction, melancholy, and drunkenness, as well as neurasthenia among highly strung Southern women, Pemberton's medication was marketed as especially good for ladies, and all those whose sedentary job induces nervous prostration. When Atlanta and Fulton County passed temperance regulations in 1886, Pemberton was compelled to create a non-alcoholic substitute for his French wine cola. After taking the wine out, he discovered that the cola nuts had made it quite bitter. He, therefore, added synthetic caffeine to make it less bitter, followed by sugar, citric acid, vanilla, lemon oil, orange, nutmeg, and coriander extracts. The syrup was combined with carbonated water to create a new delicious and refreshing drink. The name Coca-Cola was simple to come up with because the syrup's formula included both coca leaf extract and cola nut caffeine. Robinson, who was renowned for his impeccable handwriting, believed that utilizing 2 CS in the name would stand out in advertising. As a result, cola changed to cola, giving rise to the brand name. Robinson is also credited with designing the original written Coca Cola, which is now recognized as the iconic logo. On May 8, 1886, the first Coca-Cola soda fountain at Jacobs Pharmacy in Atlanta opened its doors to the public for the first time. The soft drink was marketed in quantities of around 9 per day. The first year's sales came to around $50 overall. The first year of operation, however, wasn't very successful since Pemberton lost money because the drink's production cost him more than $70. John considered this a failure. Frank, though, had a different perspective. He thought that since the company was new, the loss was to be anticipated. His optimism inspired him to come up with yet another smart concept, advertising the beverage on store awnings, streetcar posters, and banners. John resisted, but Frank persuaded him that the risk was worthwhile. Thankfully, he wasn't wrong. Sales of Coca-Cola in Atlanta skyrocketed. Asa Candler takes over. The growing popularity of Coca-Cola coincided with the deteriorating health of John Pemberton. As a result, he made the difficult decision of selling shares of the business, but kept a third of his shares for his son, Charles, who at the time was heading manufacturing. However, Charles took to morphine addiction himself and was not fit to run the company. Fearing that John's dream of making Coca-Cola a worldwide beverage brand will be short-lived, Frank sought after someone who would run with John's vision to head the company. Through a business connection, Frank met Asa Candler, an enterprising and industrious businessman. When Frank contacted him, Asa informed him that he didn't think Coca-Cola was a profitable company, but Frank disagreed. One day, when the two were standing outside, Frank pointed to a wagon and remarked, "See that wagon going by with all those empty beer kegs? Well, we're going to push Coca-Cola until you see wagons driving by with Coca-Cola, exactly like that." Swayed by the company's vision, Asa Candler paid Pemberton $2,300 for the Coca-Cola recipe in 1887. Pemberton, however, died only a few years later. Candler built the firm quickly, just as Frank expected. He not only increased sales to additional pharmacies and grocery shops, but he also came up with a revolutionary idea. He distributed little slips of paper that could be redeemed for a glass of Coca-Cola at soda machines. They were a popular hangout at the time, and many people went there to mingle. It was the first time in history that a company distributed what is now known as coupons for free samples. Coca-Cola became one of the most well-liked fountain beverages in America by the late 1890s, largely as a result of Candler's vigorous sales promotion. The Coca-Cola Company expanded sales by more than 4,000% between 1890 and 1900 under Candler's leadership. And the success of Coca-Cola was largely due to advertising, and by the turn of the century, the beverage was available throughout the United States and Canada. However, he failed to replicate the same success in Europe. Germans loved wine and beer, so anything other than those was seen as beverages for children. The French, on the other hand, saw purchasing an inferior product from America as an insult to their heritage. Introduction of bottled Coca-Cola. Until the 1960s, both small-town and big-city dwellers enjoyed carbonated beverages at the local soda fountain or ice cream saloon. Often housed in the drugstore, the soda fountain counter served as a meeting place for people of all ages. However, one day, two lawyers, Joseph Whitehead and Benjamin Thomas, walked into Asa's office and made a proposition that Coca-Cola with its growing popularity could be packaged in bottles. The idea seemed alien and unreasonable to Asa, so he discarded it. He thought that the future of Coca-Cola lay in fountain beverages, and that bottling was a costly process in which he had little interest. He assured Joseph and Benjamin that they may bottle as much Coca-Cola as they wanted for $1. He had nothing to lose since if they were successful, they would sell more syrup, and if they were unsuccessful, he would not lose a dime. The two lawyers sought capital from elsewhere and set out to bottle Coca-Cola syrup. It turned out to be a great decision. It was one of the first franchising enterprises in the United States. Customers were addicted to Coca-Cola bottles. In fact, it became so successful that competitors attempted to replicate it. With the bottles, Joseph and Benjamin were able to achieve what Asa failed at, making sales in Europe. They made bottles specifically for some of the regions. Some bottles were green with gold foil to resemble a champagne bottle. They also intensified their marketing by engaging in various sponsorship deals and partnerships. When the United States Olympic team traveled to Amsterdam for the 1928 Olympics, the organization distributed 40,000 bottles of Coca Cola. When World War II broke out, they vowed that every American soldier would be able to acquire a Coca Cola no matter where the war led them. They also popularized the present picture of Santa Claus, a happy man dressed in a red suit. Previously, he was shown as a thin guy dressed in a red, green, or brown suit. Introduction of the Diet Coke. In July 1982, Coca-Cola introduced a low-calorie option, Diet Coke. It was the first new brand to use the Coca-Cola trademark since 1886. Within a year of its launch, Diet Coke had become America's top sugar-free beverage and had boosted Coca-Cola's retail sales by 7%. The birth and death of New Coke. The trade secret New Coke recipe was introduced on April 23, 1985, in response to dwindling sales brought on by a cola industry that was becoming more competitive. The new formula, however, was viewed as a disaster. The new recipe was met with a hostile, even negative, reaction from Coca-Cola fans, and the old Coca-Cola that had won the public's hearts and taste buds was brought back within 3 months. Introduction of the Coca-Cola Contour Bottle. The iconic fluted outline of the Coca-Cola bottle is one of the most famous shapes in the world. It started with a desire to protect the Coca-Cola trademark and was a collaborative project between the Coca-Cola Company and its bottlers. On April 26, 1915, the board of directors of the Coca-Cola Bottling Association voted to spend up to $500 to develop a distinctive bottle of Coca-Cola. 8 to 10 glass companies in the United States were then tasked with developing a bottle so distinctive that it could be touched in the dark. Eventually, the contour bottle was designed, and it has continued to evolve over the years. Coca-Cola today. Today, Coca-Cola is synonymous with American culture and is regarded as a national emblem. It is also the world's second most recognized brand, after only Nike. Nearly 2 billion servings of its beverages are consumed every day in more than 200 countries. Coca-Cola has ensured that regardless of the prevailing consumer trend of the time, they have maintained a high public presence through advertising campaigns and sponsorship of athletic events, such as the Olympic Games and FIFA World Cup. Who would have thought that a syrup created by a sick man to help his pain would go on to become one of the biggest beverage brands in the world?